Hello everyone, and welcome to this Age of Alchemy battle report, which is part 5 of the campaign of Doom. Today we are going to be playing the Mysteries of the Dark off against the Spark of the Free People. Now these groups have seen combat with each other before, however the reason we're playing them off against each other today is both groups currently have, I think it's 135 as a group strength on this one, and this is 136. So they're actually very close in terms of their group strength. So I thought it'd be interesting to see how we play these two off against each other. The scenario we're going to play today is the ransack scenario. That's having models near the centre of the board. And on top of that, we are going to now take you through and show you the two groups that we're going to be playing today. For the Mysteries of the Dark, we have an Alchemist with staff, an Apprentice with 2 daggers, an ex-soldier with great weapon, Marksperson with crossbow and basic weapon, Marksperson with bow and dagger, Thief with dagger. Now we have 2 assassins. This assassin here actually is the one that recovered but has the wound so that he's -1 combat and shoot skill. This one here is the one I bought, but because of the models we have, I've switched this one out to having a dagger and basic weapon while keeping the 2 basic weapons on the original assassin. As for the Spark of the Free People, which my opponent will be playing as, they have an Alchemist with basic weapon, Apprentice with basic weapon, Pirate with basic weapon and pistol, and there's 3 of them, Marksperson with basic weapon and bow, ex-soldier with 2 basic weapons, and then a Marksperson with crossbow and dagger. Now, in the case of this, the Apprentice has the grappler skill, so about vertical movement. This pirate here has the skill that allows him to move 2 inches in the move phase, and this Marksperson here has the skill that allows him to move 2 inches in the combat phase. So we'll actually get to see how those skills work today. So that is us both deployed for this game of Ransack, with my forces on this line over here and my opponents over at the back there. However, both of us actually have the countercharge exploration, so we need to roll off for that to see who will get to move their model first. My opponent rolls a 6. I roll a 6. Let's try that again. 3, 3. Let's try that again. 1, 4. So I will move my model first. For me, I'm going to move this ex-soldier like so. And for my opponent, they're going to move their Marksperson up, and they should be able to move them
3 more inches.
Starting with my side of the deployment, we have my Thief over here, my weakened assassin over here, Markspersons, and my Alchemist. And then over on this corner we have Assassin, Apprentice, and my ex-soldier who moved up with a countercharge. As for my opponent, Pirate and ex-soldier over here, the Marksperson, Pirate, and Pirate over here. This Marksperson moved up with the countercharge skill, or with countercharge exploration. Then the Apprentice and Alchemist are over here. Turn 1 initiative, I'll roll first, getting a 5. My opponent gets a 4, so I'll go first, and they'll get a reaction token. End of turn 1 movement, we have my opponent's Alchemist has moved up around over here. The Apprentice has moved up over here. Pirate, and Marksperson have moved in over here, with this Marksperson coming across the gantries. Then on this side, Pirate and ex-soldier over here, whereas for me, ex-soldier, Apprentice, and Assassin have all moved up around this area. And then over here, we have my Marksperson and Marksperson. One's on top with the crossbow, and the one with the bow is on the bottom. Then my Thief, the wounded one, and my, or weakened Thief, and then my Alchemist and Thief. First shot from the shooting phase, my Marksperson with crossbow into my opponent's Marksperson with crossbow. Let's see if I can hit. No, I would need a 5 because of moving with a crossbow. The last bit of shooting from me, number 4 white smoke bomb from my Apprentice, is going to go on my ex-soldier. Let's give him this. Perfect, does not go off. So with that, my half of the shooting phase is over. My opponent is going to return fire with their Marksperson into my Marksperson, but we have worked out we're going to give them soft cover from this angle, and having moved, it means they're on a 6 to hit. So let's see what they get. No, they get a 2. Last bit of shooting from my opponent. This pirate is just within 4 inches of this marksperson, ex-soldier. So he's going to fire, but it will be hard cover they'll be getting from this window. So they would go from a 4 down to a 3 for short range, back up to a 5 for the cover. Which they hit, rolling to wound. Which they don't. Oh well. So with that, my opponent has decided they're not actually going to use any alchemy this turn, as there's a possibility they might get a hit from Apprentice to Marksperson, but they're not going to risk it. So we're just going to roll over into the combat phase, because we do have combats on turn 1. First, and I think possibly the only combat of turn 1, is going to be my ex-soldier charging my opponent's ex-soldier. We've measured it up. It is just within range, so I'm going to charge in like so. I have 1 attack, which I'm going to roll over here. And I get a hit, looking at damage 6 with the great weapon to resistance 4. Ooh, that's a 5, which goes up to a 7. Now my opponent can roll 2 dice, 1 for each wound, and on a 6 they will ignore them. So they don't ignore either wound, but they do get to attack me back with 2 weapons. They do have 2 basic weapons. 3's to hit. 1 hit, looking at a damage 4, resistance 4, equal wound. No, and they run away on a 3+, which they do. So my opponent is going to back themselves away. I'm going to get a 2. So with my 2 inches, I'm just going to go there, like so. With that, my opponent has decided they're not going to charge back with their ex-soldier, which I'll be honest is quite a smart move because chances of them losing out. However, that does also bring us to the end of turn 1. As you can see on the rest of the board, it's quite a bit of a scatter at the moment, as it normally tends to be on turn 1. But we will now head over into turn 2 and see who gets initiative. Start of turn 2, we'll roll for initiative. My opponent can roll first, getting a 4. I get a 1, so I'll be going second with a reaction token, and they will be going first. My opponent was just about to make their last move in the movement phase, and it was going to be this ex-soldier, but before they did, my Marksperson is going to take a nice clean shot at the ex-soldier and see what happens. I get a 5. I'll bring that over here. Now we're looking at a 4 or more to wound. Ooh, I get a 6, so it's double because it's damage 4, resistance 4. So my opponent has to roll boxcars or double 6s to get that model to survive. Ooh, they got 1, but they didn't get 2, and unfortunately that is the ex-soldier taken out of the game. With that, we come to the end of the movement phase for turn 2. As we can see, my opponent has sort of swarmed over on this side, trying to keep all their models sort of getting towards the middle. As for me, I've sort of actually tried to go for more of a flanking manoeuvre round, except for my good old assassin, who has just powered his way up the middle there. First bit of shooting for my opponent. Marksperson into local hero. Not local hero, ex-soldier. It will be a 5 because this is going to grant soft cover, and my opponent did move. So let's see what they get. They get a hit, looking at 5 or 6 to cause a wound because it's damage 3. They don't cause a wound. Next, my opponent's pirate is going to fire into my Marksperson, which we've worked out is a 6 with the long range and cover penalty. No, and they don't get a hit. Next, my opponent's marksman with a crossbow, Marksperson, is going to fire my Marksperson, and we'll need a 6, unfortunately, because of cover and moved. They get a 3, so not enough. Next bit of shooting, my opponent is going to fire a steel bullet from their Apprentice, all the way down into my exposed ex-soldier. We've worked out that they're looking on a 3 to hit, because they've moved. Let's see what they get. It's a hit. They're looking at damage 4, resistance 4. Oh, and it's not enough to wound. Start of my bar at the shooting phase. This Marksperson here is going to shoot into my opponent's pirate. Yeah. I'll need a 5 because I've moved and the soft cover. I get to re-roll that for being a Marksperson. Nope, might get there eventually. Next, my Marksperson up here is going to shoot into my opponent's Apprentice, who is in the open, but because I reacted, I will be at -2 for moving with a crossbow. No, just not enough. So my Apprentice over here is going to throw a piercing stiletto into this pirate. On a 2+, he takes a wound. He takes a wound. Simple as that. In an effort to get away from being destroyed by the models over here, this pirate is going to run around like so and can just make it over here to charge my Marksperson. So they'll have one attack hitting on a 4, which hits. Then looking at damage 3, resistance 3. That's a wound on me. However, I get to attack back with my dagger, which hits. And they're looking at 5 or 6, which I don't get. But I do back away on a 2+. So my opponent's now going to roll and see how far they can go. Okay, and they're going to move 5 inches. Over here, my opponent has decided this pirate is going to blind charge this thief here because he just can't see him, but they can make it if they pass on a 3+ on their intelligence. So they pass, so he can, because of the rough ground, just make it like so. One attack hitting on a 4. It hits, rolling to wound. No wound. My attack back hitting on a 5. I'll re-roll that because that's quite bad. Okay, hits and damage. We're actually looking at a 5 or 6 as well, which I don't get, but I do back away on a 2+, which I do. Unfortunately, being in rough ground means I can only back that far away. I'm going to back like so. So my opponent's going to roll 4, but they will have to go back and they will lose 2 of those, an inch of that, because they're in rough ground. So my opponent's going to go out to there for 2, and then if they go, 2 is going to get them. 2 will get them from that doorway to there. There we go. Next bit is actually going to be my charge phase, and my assassin is going to charge into this pirate. We have measured up. He is literally in by like that, but he can make the charge. I have 2 attacks, which I'm going to roll. Hitting on 3s because he is the one who suffered the injury. Okay. 1 hit, 1 wound. Ooh, nothing. Okay, my opponent attacks back. 1 attack hitting on a 4. No, so they were all to run away on a 3+, which they don't, so I get some free attacks here. Both hit. I get a single wound because I'm only armed with basic weapons and damage 3. And my opponent gets to run away, which they do, so they're going to back away a couple of inches, and then I'm going to go 2. So I'm actually just going to go like that myself. Last bit of charging from my side is going to be this Marksperson, who is going to jump up and run along and get into contact with this model over here. So I have 1 attack with my basic weapon hitting on a 4, which doesn't hit, and I don't reroll any of those. My opponent has 1 attack back with their dagger on a 4, who doesn't hit either, so they're going to need to roll to run away, which they... Ooh, okay. Free attack, which doesn't hit. My opponent does run away, so they're going to back away 2 inches. And I'm going to roll a 3. So with that 3, I'm just going to come the full, or away front of base to front of base, so I'm going to go back to there. With that, we actually come to the end of turn 2. So as we can see, there's a little bit of a smattering of models here. My opponent has kind of gone for a lot of the middle here, whereas I'm again enveloping around from the sides. So we will now head into turn 3 and see what happens. Start of turn 3, there is no determination and no pluck test, so it's just a roll for initiative. I get a 2, my opponent also gets a 2, so I'll roll again. I get a 5, my opponent gets a 2, so I'll be going first and they'll get a reaction token. There's the end of the movement phase for turn 3, so my opponent has again sort of moved quite heavily into the middle, whereas again I have sort of come round on the flanks to try and catch them out. We are now going to go into the shooting phase. First bit of shooting from myself is going to be from my Marksperson who moved into my opponent's pirate, needing a 4 to hit. That's a 4. Looking to wound. That's a 3, so no wound because it's damage for 3, resistance 3. Next bit of shooting, this crossbowman, whoop, down into this pirate. He is within range and hasn't moved, and there's no cover. So he hits. And looking for a 5 or 6, we'll do 2 wounds and remove him from play. No, he only takes 1 wound, but he has taken a wound. Last bit from me, white smoke bomb from her onto my assassin. See if it goes off. It does this time with exactly the opposite roll. So I'm just going to quickly move him and we'll come back to it. And that is where my assassin has ended up, staring down on this pirate. First bit of shooting from my opponent, This model here is going to fire into my assassin. He is within 4 inches, so it'll be on a 3. Ooh, that's an unfortunate miss. This pirate here is also going to try the same thing. He hits, rolling to wound, damage 4, resistance 3. Ooh, and he fails to wound with a 2 as well. Ooh. Next, my opponent's pirate is going to fire into my assassin. It is definitely within 4 inches. He can re-roll that because of being a pirate with a pistol. That's a hit. Looking to wound. Ooh, that's a critical actually. Take 2 wounds. Next, my opponent's Marksperson, all the way down into my assassin, is going to hit him on a 4 because they have moved, but there's no cover. And it is definitely within 12. Oh yeah, easily. He does hit, roll into wound. Oh, and that doesn't wound. And once again, my opponent is going to fire at this assassin with this Marksperson. Let's see what they get. That's a hit, rolling to wound. And that is enough to get rid of him. There we go. Last bit of shooting for my opponent. Heavy bullet from this Apprentice who did not move into my Alchemist. Sorry, not my Alchemist, my Assassin. It will be hitting on a 2 because my opponent did not move. Looking at a damage 6 against resistance 3, so it's +3 to this roll. Let's see what my opponent gets. 4 goes up to a 7, so I do take 2 wounds, but not 3. First of my charges into combat would have been the assassin into the pirate, but my opponent is going to use their reaction token to move them here. This will make it a blind charge. So do I pass the blind charge on a 2+? Next charge, my Alchemist here, he does have to roll, so let's see. He passes, but he's going to use the 3 inches to jump over, and he's actually going to use the remaining bit to go, like so, right behind my opponent. So I'm going to have 1 attack hitting on a 3, which hits, 5 or 6 to wound. No, but my opponent gets to attack back with 1 attack hitting on a 4. No, so they need to run away on a 2+, no, a 3+. So no, they don't. I don't hit, they can try again. Yay, they run away. So they have to go 2 inches like so. Yep, that's absolutely fine. And then I will go, oh, count that as a 3, I'm not going to re-roll a 3. And then I will go, I'm just actually going to sidle up behind them like so, and that's it. With that, and my opponent having no reactions left, I am going to charge my ex-soldier right into my opponent like so. 1 attack hitting on a 3, which doesn't. My opponent gets to attack back hitting on a 4, which also doesn't, on a 3+ running away, which they do, so they are going to have to go like so. And then I'm going to go 2 inches. I'm going to go like that with those 2 inches and stay there. Very last charge for me. This into this, like so. So I have 1 attack hitting on a 4. Let's see if we can get the hit. No, my opponent has 1 attack hitting on a 4 with their dagger. They do, rolling 5 or 6 to wound. They don't, so on a 2+, they'll run away. Yes, so they back away like so.
I have to go this way, actually.
And then I'll roll 4. Actually just going to go like that and stay there. Next, my opponent, with their Marksperson that actually has the ability to move 8 inches during the charge into combat, can go this way, and just into base contact with my assassin. So my opponent's going to try that. They'll be hitting on a 4 with 1 attack. No, they don't, so I'll be retaliating with my 2 attacks, hitting on 3s. Both hit, looking at 5, damage 3, resistance 3. So I get a wound back on them, so my opponent is looking at a 2+ to run away, which they do, so they're going to back away. And then I am going to go 5 inches, and I'm going to use that 5 inches to go. I'm going to go like so with it and put myself there. Next, my opponent's pirate, my opponent's pirate is going to charge around like so into my assassin. They'll have 1 attack hitting on a 4, which hits, looking to wound. which doesn't, I will retaliate with my 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, one of which hits and fails to wound, but I do run away, so I have to back away, like so, and my opponent gets to roll and see where they go, for 5 inches. Okay, so my opponent decided to put themselves over there by that building. Last bit of charging for my opponent, at least I think it's the last bit. This pirate is going to round into the back of my Alchemist. So they have 1 attack hitting on a 4, which fails to hit. I have 1 attack hitting on a 3 with my staff, which also fails to hit. Do I run away? I do, and I'm going to go like that. And then my opponent's going to roll 6 inches, so we will see where they... Nope, they've already decided they're going to go as far around the back as they can by the look of it. And my opponent has decided they're going to end up there. With that, we come to the end of the turn. As we can see, it was quite a back and forth turn, but we are about to go now into turn 3, and no, we're not going to go into turn 4 actually, and we will see what happens in turn 4. Start of turn 4, no determination yet again, so it's just straight into initiative with a 1 for me, 1 for my opponent. I'm going to let them roll first and see what happens. They get a 3, I get a 2, so they'll be going first, and I'll go second with a reaction token. With that, we come to the end of the movement phase for turn 4. As we can see, we're kind of all sort of collating a little bit into the middle, with my opponent sort of skirting around on this side and me coming around on this side as well. So we're about to head into the shooting phase. First bit of shooting for my opponent is going to be this pistol armed pirate into my thief. It is going to be within 4 inches, most definitely, but it is also going to be hard cover, so go down to a 3 but back up to a 5. Reroll for being a pirate with a pistol. No, my opponent misses. Next, my opponent's pirate is going to fire into the back of my crossbowman. It will be a 6, however, because of the soft cover from the height, and also because it's at long range. No, unfortunately, my opponent just misses. Next, my opponent is going to have their Marksperson with a crossbow into my Marksperson with a crossbow. See what they get. That's a hit. See if they wound. That is a single wound, but do I fall? No, I don't fall, so I just take a single wound. Next, my opponent's Marksperson who moved is going to take a shot at my Marksperson, so it will be on a 4 for this one. That's a hit, rolling to wound. That is not a wound. So next, my opponent with their steel bullet is going to go from Apprentice to my Marksperson over here. They need a 2 to hit because they haven't moved. There's no cover. Close. And then rolling to wound. Let's see what they get. Damage 4. Ooh, that is a single wound, and I don't fall. In a bit of a you do or you don't here, this model, this Marksperson, is going to hit this pirate on a 6, if I can. So close. Next, my Marksperson with the crossbow is going to return fire into my opponent's one. Has not moved, so definitely hits. Rolling to wound. Gets a wound, damage 4 against resistance 3, but my opponent now has to roll to see if they fall. On a 1 they will. No, so they only take a wound. Last bit, yeah, last bit from me. Stiletto. Piercing stiletto into this local hero. No, not local hero, Marksperson. It hits, so he just takes a wound. First bit of a charging from my opponent. Once again, Marksperson into Assassin, like so. 1 attack, hitting on a 4. He doesn't hit. I get 2 attacks back on a hit on 3s. 1 hit, 50-50. And it is just enough to see him off. And I'll roll while I'm here. 2 inches. And with that, I have moved my assassin back to here. The 2 inches I rolled, just not enough to do what I wanted. Next, my opponent is going to charge pirate into Marksperson like so. They have 1 attack, hitting on a 4, which does, rolling to wound, which also does. So, there goes that. My opponent is moved to there. Over here, my thief is going to whip round like so, and charge into my opponent's pirate. One attack with that dagger. It doesn't hit. My opponent attacks back. Does hit. Roll into wound. Doesn't roll to wound, so they back away on a 3+, which they do. And in fact, 2 inches, not any further than that. 3, I am going to go like that. Next, and probably what is going to be my last charge, blind charge from him up into here. He gets it, so he's going to go whoop, whoop, just like that. 1 attack. Let's see if he actually hits this time. He does. Looking at damage 6 to resistance 3. Let's see what happens. 2 goes up to a 5, but he is within range of an edge, so he's going to have to roll to see what happens. He doesn't fall, gets to attack back. Hits, roll to wound on a 5 or 6. Ooh, he wounds, which I do ignore, and I did not want to ignore that wound. Because if I didn't ignore it, would have been another combat, and he probably would have died. But anyway, my opponent now has to roll to back away on a 2+. And they do, so they're going to have to back away into that corner. And I get to go 1 inch. Okay, I'll go over there then. With that, we actually come to the end of the turn, on turn 4. And we're just about to go into turn 5, as we can see. Quite a lot of combats going on, quite a lot of models removed. So we are going to have to do some determination and maybe even a pluck test if it goes wrong. But we'll see. Anyway, join us as we go into turn 5. Start of turn 5. First is me for determination. Yay! I lose a model. Who is the most wounded? It would be my assassin. So my assassin runs from the table. My opponent doesn't actually remove him though, so doesn't get any experience, but he is gone. Because I failed that determination and pluck test come after determination, I could roll a 6 here and fail my pluck test. Close. Now we come to the determination for my opponent. They've passed, so they don't need to remove any models. After all that, we are on to the initiative phase. I get a 1. My opponent gets a 3. So I'll be going second with 2 reaction tokens. If I can pick them up, that is. And then my opponent will be going first. With that, we come to the end of turn 5 movement phase. As we can see, my opponent's sort of gone around on the edges here, whereas I've really tried to pressure right in the middle of the game here to see what will happen. First bit of shooting from my opponent is going to be from this model pirate in here into this ex-soldier in here. So it's 1 attack, hitting on a 3 because I'm that short range. My opponent hits, rolling to wound. Ooh, and they don't get enough because I am resistance 4. Next, this pirate is going to shoot into my Apprentice, hitting on a 5 because of the range penalty. Reroll for a pirate with a pistol. No, not enough. Lastly, my opponent here is going to shoot into my Marksperson, so Marksperson to Marksperson. Will be on a 6 because they have moved and it is cover. No, not enough. Start of my shooting here. My Marksperson is going to fire back at my opponent's Marksperson, hitting on a 5 for movement and cover. No, so he misses. With my last bit of alchemy in the game, of all the ones I've got, piercing stiletto into him. And it wounds, and that is his last wound, so he is removed from play. And I'll mark up my Alchemist, who's got, when I find the number 1, there we are. He's got a kill. First bit of charging from my opponent, this pirate into this Apprentice. And round they go, like so. So my opponent gets 1 attack, hitting on a 4, which doesn't hit. I get 2 attacks, hitting on a 3. I do have 2 daggers. I get 1 hit, 5 or 6. I get 1 wound, so my opponent is going to back away on a 3+, which they don't. So I get 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, 1 hit, wounding on 5s and 6s. Fail to wound, but my opponent backs away. And I get to go 4 inches. I'm going to move back to there. First charge for me is going to be my ex-soldier. He's going to charge into... yeah, we can shuffle him along, there he goes, into my opponent's pirate, like so. I have 1 attack, hitting on a 3. It's a miss, so my opponent gets to attack back, hitting on a 4. Which they do, rolling to wound. Which they don't, so they'll back away on a 3+. Which they do, so unfortunately they can only really back away I can inch that way. And then I get to roll a 5. So I'm actually just going to stay... Going to shuffle into the corner there and stay in the room with them. Next, my Apprentice is going to charge my opponent's pirate. They're actually going to charge like that. They can just get in. So they have 2 attacks, hitting on 3s. Both hit. Oof, blooming hell. Go on, double 5 and 6. Go on. 1. So my opponent takes a wound. And then rolls their attacks back. 1 attack, hitting on a 4. No. Rolling to run away. Yes, they do. And then I go an inch. Okay. Like that. Last combat, or last charge of the combat phase is... Oops. Shoving him out of the way. Is this one like so. So I have 1 attack, hitting on a 3. Which I get with a 4. I've also knocked my knockout dice. 1 wound, hitting on a 5 or 6. I don't get a wound, so my opponent gets an attack back, hitting on a 4. Requiring a 5 or 6 to wound, because I am resistance 4 at the moment with the staff. So they don't, and they back away on a 3+. And they don't. I'll have my free attack, which hits, which wounds. Luckily not a critical for my opponent, but they will go up to 2 wounds. And then they will try and roll to run away. Which they do. Unfortunately, they can only really back into the corner like so. And whatever I roll, I'm actually just going to do that, because that would be an inch. And with that, we actually come to the end of turn 5, going into turn 6, which will be the last turn one way or another. Now, one thing to point out, I did get 2 reaction tokens, but the reason this turn took a lot longer than you see on camera is me and my opponent really had to make some careful moves here because of my reactions. So even though I didn't use them, they were really surprisingly useful in this game. Start of turn 6, my opponent is going to roll their determination first, which they pass, but they are going to roll their pluck test, because on a 6 they could fail, which also they pass as well, so they're okay for this turn. Next, my determination. I pass. Pluck test. I also pass. Hey, we're doing well. Turn 6, initiative phase. My opponent gets a 3. I get a 5. So my opponent goes second with 2 reaction tokens, and I get to go first. I was about to move my Apprentice over here. My opponent has decided they are going to open fire with a snapshot. Now they need to roll and see if they get a hit on a 3+. That's a hit. Roll to wound. Damage 4, resistance 4. Ooh, and that is unfortunately a fail. And while I'm here, I am going to shifter against that window so we can block this pirate in here. End of movement phase. We have basically, as you would pretty much expect, closed up on the central objective. So what we're going to do is go into the shooting phase, which starts with myself, and we will see what happens. First bit of shooting, my Marksperson is going to fire into my opponent's pirate. Now I'm just within 4 inches, and because I'm touching that bit of cover, it doesn't count. However, I have moved, so they'll cancel each other out to make it a 3. Reroll for being a Marksperson. What is it with us rerolling 1s into 2s? Next, my opponent is going to fire back with their pirate into my guy. It will be 4 to hit because I will get the soft cover, but they are in short range. They've hit, rolling to wound. Ooh, and they have got a critical, so that is me removed from play. For my opponent's Alchemy, it's going to be 1 high explosive shell, the number 1, and they've decided to put it here. We already just quickly pre-measured it because we knew that it's with a point within 6 inches. So on a 3+, it will go off. It does. He will take a damage 5 hit, so my opponent's now going to roll to see what happens. 4, so that would go up to a 6, so he would take 2 wounds. Last bit of shooting for my opponent, pirate hiding in here, into my Apprentice outside here, hitting on a 3 because they are in super short range. They hit, rolling to wound. Ooh, and they don't get a wound. First bit of charging for me in the last turn is ex-soldier. Whoop. Oh, spun round. Into the pirate. 1 attack, which hits. Rolling to wound. Hey, it doesn't matter what I rolled there, as long as it wasn't a 1. He is curse-splat. That is him removed. So I rolled a 6 to see how far I can move. And with that, I'm actually just going to go in here, like so. Next, My Apprentice is going to charge into the pirate, but the pirate is going to countercharge and go the 3 inches like so. So they can push back into the centre of the objective. They have 1 attack hitting on a 4. We'll reroll that. Hitting on a 4. Hits, rolls wound. Single wound. And then I attack back. Ooh, throwing dice everywhere. 2 attacks that hit with the daggers. And I do sink him with that last wound because he only had 1 remaining. So I've rolled a 6. And I'm actually just going to... I'm going to stay put with that, to be perfectly honest. Next, my opponent's Alchemist is going to swing around like so and charge into my Thief. So they have 1 attack hitting on a 3. Which doesn't. I have 1 attack hitting on a 5. Which doesn't. I'll re-roll that. It does. Ruining on a 5. It doesn't. Do I run away? I do run away. And I am going to run away... like so. Then my opponent's going to roll 2 inches, which I'm guessing they're going to go... they're going to go a little bit closer to the centre. Yeah, of course. So my opponent has decided, pirate, into my Thief. So we each have 1 wound left. This could be interesting. 1 attack from the pirate, which fails to hit. 1 from the Thief. Go on, boy. You've done nothing all game, except live. No, but does he run away? Yes. So he is going to run away into... just going to go back where he was, to be perfectly honest, and go and hide in the corner. My opponent gets to roll, see where they go. 1 inch, okay, so they're just going to go a bit closer to the centre. And with that, you can see the big yellow dice in the middle, the one that we use for rolling, that is the centre point. Well, it's actually below the building, but we put it there to make it easier to see. And we have worked out that every single model on the table is wholly within 8 inches of that point. So I have 4 models, Thief, Apprentice, Alchemist, and Ex-Soldier. My opponent has 3, Alchemist and Apprentice, and... oh, that's the wrong way around, and Pirate. So it's a win to me by a single model at this point. However, because of the terms of the scenario that we're playing, my opponent will actually still get a fair few coins as well as myself. We will come back to you as we do the wrap-up. And that is it. That is the end of this ransack game. As we can see, I won by 1 model, basically just 4 models to my opponent's 3. It was quite an entertaining game where it just constantly kept changing hands, it seemed, as to who was really going to hold the centre. But a couple of good rolls on my end, and it went my way. That's just how these things go. So anyway, that is the end of the game. Thank you very much for joining us. If you would like to get access to the rules for this game series, which now have... we have the regular rules, we have campaign rules, and we have solo play rules on the way as well. If you'd like to get access to them, head to the Patreon link in the description below, or the one that flashes up at the beginning of this video, and then you can get access to, if you buy for the Scoundrel, you'll get extra videos. If you go for the Novice, you will get all the rules, sets, expansions, tools, resources, and everything else that gets released. And if you go for the local hero, you will be able to see sneak previews of new rules coming out. You'll be able to have more of a say on the rules and how the game progresses. And on top of that, you will also be allowed to pop your name into the hat for naming some of the models in our future campaigns. So have a look and see which tier you'd like to support us on. All that remains to say from me and my opponent behind the camera is thank you very much for joining us for this battle report. Patrons, you will get the post-game video partway through the week, usually by Wednesday. And the rest of you, we will see you for the next battle report on Sunday. To all of you watching, thank you very much. Goodbye.